What up, my dudes? We got them New Balances on today, baby. Oh, man. Ready to rock and roll. New MX versus ATV game. So, reason why I'm making this video is I do think we are getting a little closer to some sort of an announcement, some sort of an official post about this whole mystical new MX versus ATV game. You might have seen a couple YouTubers making some videos like new MX versus ATV game confirmed and all that a few months back. It was probably like 4 or 5 months back. I don't know. I've been on the moon for like half a year now. So a few months back, MX versus ATV's, I think it was their Instagram account, like replied to somebody on Twitter or Instagram or some shit. Down there at the Walmarts, something replied to somebody. They were talking about one of THQ Nordic's other games. I think it might have been the Monster Truck game. Anyways, MX versus ATV, THQ Nordic replied to this person and said something along the lines of like, you know, it's MX versus ATV's turn now or something like that. I can't remember exactly. I know a couple of you guys actually sent that to me. It's like, oh my God, Spence, check out, it's going to be a new MX versus ATV game, right? Which I knew they had already been working on one for a little while now. So it's been, what, 2 or 3 years now since we got MX versus ATV All Out. And so they certainly have been working on a new MX versus ATV game. I mean, there's just no doubt about that. Like, they definitely have been doing that. And if I was to predict, I'd say we're going to be getting this new MX versus ATV game either in 2021 or 2022. I don't think it's going to go any later than that. I know somebody did just tell me that they are going to be releasing an announcement sometime this month. That could have been complete bullshit. Do not take that at all seriously. I'm just saying, but just in general, they should be getting closer to some kind of an announcement with this new MX versus ATV game regardless. You know what I'm saying? Like, they should be getting quite a bit closer. So we're definitely getting a little more to that time frame, and I just wanted to talk about that a little bit in this video and just kind of explain my thoughts and stuff, because I think we're going to get something that's somewhere in the neighborhood of like a MX versus ATV All Out mixed with Reflex. At least that's kind of what I hope. But I kind of feel like that's the way they're going. That's sort of the direction that they're going. So I think that's what we're going to end up getting, something along the lines like MX versus ATV All Out, but a little more Reflexy feel. They've struggled to find that Reflex feel ever since Reflex came out. It's very bizarre. You know, and it's like they've been searching for it, been trying to find it again, but they just haven't really been able to do it. And yeah, that's kind of seems like that's how that's went down. So, but I also think the big thing with this next MX versus ATV game is it needs a track editor. And I ain't talking about the official Monster Energy Supercross game track editor where everybody's tracks looks the exact same and you have module pieces. That's not the kind of track editor I'm talking about here, big dogs. I'm talking about full-blown PC, top-down, 3D, edit every little rut and bump and jump and hump exactly how you want it. Put your own skyboxes in there, put your own decals in there and 3D objects like the track editor of MX Simulator and Reflex and MX Bikes that's on PC. I mean, to be honest with you, don't get me wrong. I think it's good to have a track editor regardless versus not having one. But like when you really think about it, if you're deep enough into PC motocross gaming, it's almost pointless for one of these game companies to go in there and have a like console built type track editor, you know, that was built to be able to use it on a console with like pre-made pieces and all that, like Milestone did. It's really kind of pointless to do that, man, because it's like in this day and age, like if you're serious enough into motocross gaming to be jacking around really with a track editor, you should have a PC at this point. Like, you just really should. I mean, trust me, I love console gaming still to this day. I'm playing on a 360 in this gameplay, okay? I understand every positive thing to console gaming, but like, you got to understand how much of a restriction it is to a track editor or a world builder or a map editor. You just can't even really do it on consoles, you know? Like, even a Forge editor in Halo is completely different than a full-blown map editor on a PC, like full-blown map editor for the original Halo Combat Evolved. You know, two completely different worlds, and it's kind of the same way with the track editor that they had in the Milestone games versus the kind of PC-based track editor that you have for Reflex. And that's what I'm saying. Like, if they're going to put any time into having any kind of track editor, it needs to be put into a full-blown PC-based track editor. You know what I'm saying? It's like, so that's something I think a lot of people just don't think about. You know, you got these real heavy console only, they've never played on a PC in their entire life kind of people. And they genuinely, I feel like, do not actually understand what a PC motocross track editor really does for a dirt bike game. Like, that's a big reason why Reflex lasted a decade plus, was because not just it was a track editor in the game, not just because it was some console-based, you know, Milestone track editor, but because it was a full-blown PC, build literally whatever your mind can imagine track editor. That's why it made that game last so long. If MX Simulator had some kind of bullshit console-based pre-made piece track editor, that game wouldn't even be half of what it is, right? It's because you can go in there and make crazy shit like space tracks and moon tracks and, you know, Mario Rainbow Road tracks and all this just unbelievable Dragon Ball Z tracks. I mean, they've done just about everything you can imagine on MX Sim with that track editor. And, you know, even some of the tracks on Reflex, like the Hydra, I can't even remember half of those crazy ass tracks, but cool shit like that you wouldn't necessarily see in real life biome wise. They kind of like made it cool and weird and different. Just stuff that you would never be able to make in a standard console-based track editor. You just never would. You know, MX Simulator was never even intended to have Supermoto in the game at all. But the fact that the track editor is so endless, you can go in there with a concrete or a road-looking decal and then make it super tractioned, like what road feels like what concrete feels like, and there, boom, there you go. You just created Supermoto in a game that it was never even meant to be in. It's the same way with Hill Climb. It's the same way with all that crap. You think you can put a Enduro, Hair Scramble, Hill Climb, Supermoto track in a Milestone game? No, you can't. Can't even come close to that. So, either way, yeah, it's very important, to say the least, that they have a full-blown track editor and have the whole Steam Workshop support with it and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, if they can just get a little bit more of that Reflex feeling, get the full-blown PC-based track editor, I mean, it's just set up for success. And trust me, I love to death. I think it's one of the best DLCs they've ever added to any motocross game ever, was the whole official Lucas Oil Pro Motocross DLC that they added for MX vs. ATV All Out. I mean, that literally is some of the best DLC I've ever seen in my life. I'm not kidding when I say that at all, bro. But if you have that full-blown track editor, not only are you going to have all those replica tracks made in the game by some, you know, content creator, track maker guy, you're going to have all that stuff that you would have had spent all that time on the DLC with, but then you're also going to have it for every single year, right? They've got 2018 Hangtown replica track for Reflex. They've got 2007 fucking, you know, Anaheim 1 replica for MX Simulator. I mean, you just start to get this endless. So some of you guys that are thinking, oh man, it was so cool having that 1 or 2 years, I think they had, of the Lucas Oil Pro Motocross replica tracks in All Out, well, times that by about 100, and that's what you would have with a full-blown track editor in the game. So yeah, that's the heavy hitter stuff. Obviously, it's got to have a good terrain deformation system. I still prefer the terrain deformation system of Reflex over MX vs. ATV All Outs. I know they did a lot of updates to it in All Out, but I still prefer Reflex's terrain deformation system. It's literally every aspect of Reflex on the console, how good it felt on the 360 back in the day. That's what they need to be looking back to, period. Like, every aspect of it. The physics, the track designs, the deformation, the whole fucking shebang, bro. The track editor on PC, the whole caboodle. And if it was actually an official track editor from the developer on PC and it was easy enough to use, oh my God, dude. People would be all over that shit, bro. It gets to that point where it's like, I understand you don't want to put a track editor in there where people can just make what you would create with DLC, so you kind of would lose money in a sense, but you really wouldn't lose money, because guess what? If you put a full-blown track editor like what's in Reflex in the next MX versus ATV game, the game is going to literally last 10 times as long, and you're going to have 10 times the amount of people buy the game that would have otherwise. So instead of you making the DLC and making money off the DLC, guess what? Your game will last 10 times as long. You don't even have to do the DLC, because your content track makers of the game will make all the DLC that you could ever imagine being in your game, and you'll sell more copies of it because of it. That's how MX Simulator sells copies of the game, because there's literally every replica track that you can imagine from 2007 until now in the game. You know, that's such a heavy hitter aspect to why MX Simulator sells so many copies. Not only the physics, but it's just endless track content. It's endless ways to play the game. They got fucking NASCAR tracks on MX Simulator and custom NASCAR, literally NASCAR models in the game. You got these silly-ass, like, 50cc pit bike tracks in the game. That's another thing they have to have in this next MX vs. ATV game is 50cc bikes, you know, 2 strokes, 125, 252 strokes. They just got to have it, bro. Got to have it. So it'll be interesting to see if they like bring back monster trucks in it. I know they made an entirely separate monster truck game. THQ Nordic did. Remember when they just put that in the MX vs. ATV game? That was kind of cool back in those days. But it'd be cool if they'd bring that back. You know, they already obviously have the physics system and the models and everything made of their last monster truck game. I don't know why they don't just put monster trucks in the next MX vs. ATV game. Make it feel old school as shit. Make it feel cool. And I really want to see them get back to the good old days of Unleashed and Untamed, where you had these crazy-ass track biomes like the jungle tracks and the you know, hit a portal in a Pharaoh's tomb, you know, a crazy ass like Northern Lights and all these just really cool, unique biomes that they used to have on the tracks back in the day. It was so cool to me how they used to do that. You know, the swampy, you know, super foggy, swampy track. I mean, it's just endless, the amount of cool track designs they had back in the day. So I would love to see that. I would love to see a good biome diversity in the next MX vs. ATV game with the stock tracks. You know, have some really good sand tracks in the game, some good hard-packed dry tracks, some snow tracks. Make the snow have like a different traction feeling to it, but it's literally a, you know, couple motocross tracks and an outdoor supercross track on a snowy environment. But like, it's so much fun to ride on those tracks because they're a completely different feeling than any of the other tracks actually feel in the game. Reflex touched on the snow vibe a little bit with that snowy free ride track, but there was no motocross tracks or supercross tracks in the snow. So I think that would be very cool. You know, it kind of leads me into the next part of this discussion, is having the next MX vs. ATV game where it's like half of the supercross tracks are like the typical in a stadium, and then the other half of the supercross tracks are outdoor supercross tracks, like training compound supercross tracks, and, you know, out in the snow supercross tracks, out in the desert biome supercross tracks. At least have half of the supercross tracks outdoor like that. I think that's something they've never really done a whole lot of, and it would add a lot of variation to the supercross tracks in the game versus making them feel like they're just all in a stadium, right? So that would be very, very cool to see that in the game as well. But yeah, definitely let me know down in the comments what you guys think, what you want to see, when you think the game's going to come out, and I will take a look at it. But that's about all I can say in this video without it being 3 years long. So see you boys on that next one. Later, dudes.